Okay, well, I think I'm just a normal person who believes that the best way to support our troops is to actually bring them home. I don't think the reasons given by our government as to what we're doing in Afghanistan make sense. I think we're actually making people at home less secure by going into the Middle East and fighting this, and a lot of civilians are being caught up in this tragedy. I just want our troops home. There's enough soldiers that have died. I just think they should come home, and we should allow Afghanis to basically rule their own country.
And what have your thoughts been over the last fortnight with so many British troops dying?
It's just a tragedy every day. You know, it seems like there's extra numbers, and it's not about equipment. It's the fact that they're in a country where history has shown it's just not a winnable war. And whether these guys are terrorists or Taliban or Al-Qaeda or people who are just saying, you know, get the hell out of our country, you know, we don't want foreign troops in it, I'm not really sure. But at the end of the day, the Russians took a decade before they decided it was futile, and, you know, Britain will eventually, and America will eventually have to get out as well.
What do you think about some of the costs to the UK economy and the cost to the taxpayer?
I think that's a trivial matter for me. It's about human lives, whether they be Afghanis or British lives or British soldiers or civilians. At the end of the day, a human life is a human life to me, and it's worth the same whether they're Iraqi or American or British or Afghani. So as far as I'm concerned, the monetary aspect is secondary.
It's all about lives.
It's all about lives.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our troops went into Afghanistan supposedly to rout Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. And what happened was that they just decamped over the border to Pakistan. And since then, there doesn't appear to be any purpose to the mission. At the moment, we seem to be fighting Pashtuns, indigenous people, in fact, who would just rather that Western troops were not in Afghanistan. And their concern seems to be that we could undermine the culture of Islam in Afghanistan. They call them the Taliban, and if they are indeed the Taliban, they're not the same Taliban, fanatical Islamists who were originally in place in 2001. And anybody, whether they're in Downing Street, the House of Commons, whether they're the soldiers on the ground, they seem to have lost sight of what the mission is all about.
And now the war's been going on longer than World War I and II. It's cost the UK taxpayer billions of pounds. Do you think it's made us any safer?
It certainly hasn't. What it's doing, in fact, is making us less safe. If you think that the thing that threatens us is terrorism, because it's just simply upsetting people to see native Afghans slaughtered in the numbers in which they seem to be. And all the promises about medicine for the sick and education for the illiterate and food for the hungry and the starving, that all seems to sound so hollow. It seems such rubbish when you compare what's actually happened over 7 years. Very little.
And it seems that you're right that very few of those promises have been acted upon, particularly in relation to women, and women's rights in Afghanistan seem to be as worse than they ever were.
Yes, they won't actually deal with that issue. That issue is not strictly about Islam, but it's about the way in which Islam is interpreted in the villages and the tribal areas. And you would need hundreds of years if you were to really tackle that issue. And I understand that people are angry about that, and it clashes particularly with Western values. But the soldiers killing people in Helmand province aren't going to tackle that issue at all.
Do you think the civilian death toll has been reportedly to be increasing the ranks of opposition in Afghanistan?
Absolutely it has, yes. And we don't hear very much about the numbers of people who are killed in Afghanistan, indigenous people who are killed in Afghanistan. We're upset about the numbers of our troops that are killed, but it's nothing, I'm sure, if the truth were told, compared to the numbers in Afghanistan who are dying.
Absolutely. And what do you think of Gordon Brown's leadership in this time of conflict, particularly in relation to the under-equipping of troops and the huge death toll we've had in the past fortnight?
I don't think very much of Gordon Brown's leadership in any respect, and this is no exception.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Troops out! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Troops out! When do we want it? Now! Get the troops out 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 now!
Dropping out with the Stop War Coalition today because I'm a supporter of theirs. I agree with what they've been saying about Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah. And what have your thoughts been about the number of casualties of British troops in the last 2 weeks?
It's just terrible, it's unbelievable. And I think it's a sign that whatever strategy, not strategy, has been going on isn't working.
Yeah.
Aside from the wider political issues about whether we should be there at all.
Yeah. And what do you think about things like women's issues in Afghanistan? A lot of people say we're there for freedom and for women's rights.
I don't believe that's the reason we went in there, and don't believe that it's our job to go around the world bringing everyone up to the supposed 21st century. And if we were, we shouldn't be doing it with bombs and killing innocent children and families.
Troops out! What do we want? Troops out! When do we want it? Now! Now! Get the troops out 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 now!
Well, I'm a teacher from Hertfordshire, and I've come up here because I hope that this is the start of a mass protest to bring our troops home. We support the troops, we want them brought home. Of course, the other thing we have to remember is the number of Afghan civilians who are being killed as well. They're part of the equation, part of the reason we must get out of that country.
And if you had a message for Gordon Brown today, what would you tell him?
Listen.
Thank you very much.
Troops out! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Troops out! When do we want it? Now! Get the troops out 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 now! Troops out now! Killing, no more lives!
Bring the troops home alive!
No more killing, no more lives!
Bring the troops home alive!
No more killing, no more lives!
Bring the troops home alive!
No more killing, no more lives!
Bring the troops home alive!
No more killing, no more lives!
Bring the troops home alive!